This is Finley. This is my pet dog, so I'm going to be narrating while I'm around him. A couple things I want to point out right away is before we approach the trap, we need to think about things like light. So if we're trapping at night, let's make sure that we're using as little light as possible, and then green light or red light is ideal. As much light as is necessary for your safety, but I've found that very little red light goes a long way and is more than sufficient. A lot of people prefer green light, and that's fine too. See, Finn is mostly worried about getting the rest of the bait out of the trap, not so worried about my presence. But also think about how closely you bring your vehicle. Obviously, a vehicle coming close to a feral dog or a community dog or whatever category you want to put that animal into, they're not going to like that. Having a running vehicle with hot exhaust or hot engine, just think about those things and put your vehicle as far away as is reasonable. And the very first thing we're going to do is cover the dog. So we're not going to sit here and narrate a video before we interact with the dog. First thing we're going to do, cover that trap completely. So in this case, I'm using a canvas tarp. And this is big enough to cover the trap on all sides, all the way to the ground. And so I've seen it time and again, even with a really fractious dog, covering the trap calms them down really, really quickly. It really makes a really big difference. But notice, as big as this tarp is, I needed all of it. This tarp was actually made specifically for a trap this size. So you can buy, obviously, a tarp at a hardware store or something that will fit. Just make sure that it covers completely, because we really want it dark in there, and we want them to feel as comfortable and safe as they possibly can, given the circumstances. All right, so our next step is going to be either to remove the trap as it is with the dog in it, with the cover on it. We can put that in the back of a truck. If it's hotter, I might open up one end so we get some airflow, or both ends, but strap everything down, cover included. And you can drive an animal a reasonable distance in that configuration. Inside of a van is even better if you've got climate control. I understand resource limitations. I've transported a lot of dogs in the back of trucks this way, but keeping them covered so they're protected. So we don't have to have the best resources in order to accomplish this humanely. But I'm in the field right now. I'm going to also show you transferring into a restraint module and transferring into a transfer cage. So a transfer cage is going to be lighter, so a little easier to move. Also smaller, so you can fit more transfer cages in a vehicle than you can fit loaded traps. But we could also use the restraint module at the clinic or at a shelter, or whatever the case may be. So that may be where it ends up getting used. All right, so let's get started with the restraint module. Again, assuming that we're using it in the field instead of in a clinic or shelter environment. So first we want to make sure that the door we're not using is properly secured. The door we are using is not secured, that it can open freely. Make sure that that happens. We're going to uncover the side that we're using. I'm going to make sure this door is unlatched and it's ready to move as well. Okay, so I got a couple of bumps over here. I'm going to adjust the trap out just a little bit. Get these two lined up. Now I'm going to take my bungee cords and connect the two cages. It can be really demoralizing to lose a dog that you've just caught, especially if they're extremely difficult to catch. So go ahead and get these secured. These are not the best bungees in the world, but they'll help keep the traps in alignment. I'm going to open this up, and now I'm going to open both doors. I'm going to go ahead and the door on the restraint module, I'm going to sort of cock at a little bit of an angle. The door on the dog trap, I'm just going to remove completely. And see, this is my dog. He's really thinking, should I go over there? Ideally, he just moves. But the first thing I'm going to do to try to get him to move is uncover the trap, and I'm going to cover the restraint module. So what I've just done is I've given the dog two options. The first option they had was to move from a dark space to a light space when the cover was over there. So that gives them that option. If they want to feel like they can escape, they may run right out. Now I'm giving him the option of moving from a light space to a dark space if he feels more comfortable over here. Finley is really unsure what he wants, so that brings us to option number 3. Option number 3 is going to be use of the Y pole more than anything. But we can also use our body. If he was afraid of me, didn't like me being around, he may just move away from me. That's obviously not the case. He can't wait for me to let him out in this case. So I'm gonna take my Y pole, I'm gonna open this door just enough, blocking it with my knee, opening it just enough that I can get the Y pole inside at an angle. It takes some configuring. See, this is not a normal use case because he's so friendly. So now I could take my Y pole and just gently push him back. Okay, so now that I have my dog inside of my restraint module, I'm gonna go ahead and secure the door. I'm gonna cover it completely. And now I can work with the dog as I need to. To access the part of the dog that I need, so I can see which way he's oriented, head or hind. I don't even need to uncover this side. I can just move the wall, and I'll uncover that just so you can see that wall is moving. It's restricting the animal's ability to move. I don't have to crush this dog and pin them up against the wall. Now I might, if they're very fractious, very aggressive, that's a possibility. Most instances, I can simply go through the outside and quickly get an injection into them, but I can apply as much restraint as I need to. And there are little notches along these black bars that allow it to lock into place. So even if one person is doing this station or working with this animal, I can get access. I don't have to be trying to work both sides at the same time. As soon as I've accomplished whatever I need to accomplish, I release, and then we can inverse the entire process. Now I can transfer from the restraint module into a transfer cage or a crate, or just release them into a kennel, whatever the case may be. I hope this video gives you some really useful tips and tricks that you can use to catch dogs using Humane live traps. It really is a fantastic tool that can give you a hands-off approach to dealing with some of the most fractious dogs you can imagine. You don't have to touch them, you don't have to stress them, you don't have to expose yourself to risk. If you set the trap properly, and there is a lot that goes into like where you should set it, and you've got to think about things like where does the animal eat and when do they eat and things of that nature. Free roaming dogs tend to be pretty crepuscular, so they're active at dawn and dusk primarily. That's not exclusively true, but it's generally true. So the hours can be a little bit difficult if you're trying to work a standard 9 to 5. So keep that in mind. But it really is a fantastic tool that can do so much to help you catch those animals, and then to work with those animals in a way that is lower risk for you, lower stress for them. And please don't think of it just as a field tool, because it's fantastic inside of buildings as well. Whether you have hoarding situations where you have a lot of animals inside, you don't have to go hands-on with those animals and net them or pull them or whatever. You can set up traps. Even within a house space, so you can open up the garage and put traps inside the garage and let animals trap themselves over time. The same is true with cats. If you have cats escape in your shelter, you don't have to go catch them immediately. You can set a trap and you can let them catch themselves over time. And then it gives you the ability to manipulate those animals, and I mean that in the best possible way. To be able to physically interact with them to accomplish our goal, keeping in mind all of our welfare and low stress principles. I think that this is a tool that can really help you to accomplish a lot in your career in a very safe